Picture the scene. You're pulled over on the side of the road, the patrol lights flashing behind your car, and the officer walks up to your window and says the sentence nobody wants to hear: "I'm going to have your vehicle impounded." In that instant, your heart starts racing. Your mind starts spinning through 1,000 thoughts at once. How am I going to get to work tomorrow without a car? How much is this going to cost me? What if I lose my job over this? That's exactly the moment when most people make the mistake that ends up costing them later, because panic makes us react with emotion instead of reason. And it's precisely in those seconds between hearing the threat and opening your mouth to respond that it gets decided whether the situation is going to get worse or stay under control. I've seen drivers in Ohio and Florida and Texas, pretty much everywhere in this country, completely lose their patience in that exact moment. And the problem isn't feeling fear or anger. That's human, that's normal. Anyone would feel the same way. The problem is what you do with that fear, because decisions made in 5 or 10 seconds on the side of the road can turn a routine traffic ticket into something that follows you around for months. The good news is that there's a way to respond that is neither surrendering nor confronting. There's a response that shows the officer you're cooperating, while at the same time protecting exactly what the Constitution already guarantees you. It's not a magic phrase that makes the officer change his mind on the spot. Nobody can promise that. But it's a phrase that completely changes the tone of the conversation, that puts everything on record in a professional way, and that keeps you from throwing away rights that are legally yours in the heat of the moment. And that's what this video is about. It's not about arguing with the police. It's not about winning against anyone. It's about knowing with clarity what to say at the exact moment when the pressure is highest, so you can walk away from that stop with your head held high and your rights intact. Now, let me tell you what I see over and over, year after year, case after case. Drivers who argue with the officer during the stop, and by doing so, turn a situation that could have been resolved calmly into a legal nightmare. Raising your voice is the first classic mistake. I get the impulse. You feel wronged. You feel like you're being treated unfairly. But yelling at an officer on the side of the road has never helped anyone come out of that situation better off. Quite the opposite. That's usually used afterward as proof that you were resisting or not cooperating. The second mistake is threatening to sue the officer right there on the spot. "I'm going to sue you. This is illegal. You'll see." Look, you might even be right at the core of it. But saying that in the heat of the stop doesn't change anything in the moment. It just puts the officer on the defensive and escalates the situation. The third mistake is shutting down communication completely, refusing to say anything at all, crossing your arms, turning your face away. That doesn't help either, because cooperating is not the same thing as giving up your rights. And a lot of people mix those two things up. And the fourth mistake, the most serious of all, physically trying to prevent the vehicle from being impounded. Holding the door, standing in front of the car, pushing. That can turn a traffic ticket into an actual criminal charge, obstruction, resisting arrest, and so on. Here's what I want you to understand. A lot of people think they need to win the argument right there on the side of the road, but that was never the goal. The real goal is to walk away from that stop with your rights preserved, with everything documented, and with the ability to challenge it later in the right place, which is the courtroom, not the shoulder of the highway. There's a huge difference between obeying a lawful order from the officer and giving up the protections the law already gives you. You can do both things at the same time, cooperate with the procedure and still make it clear that you know and are holding on to your rights. So we get to the main point of this video. What should you say when the officer announces he's going to impound your vehicle? The response needs to have three qualities at once. It needs to be calm, it needs to be direct, and it needs to be respectful. No confrontational tone, no tone of total submission, just clarity. The phrase is this: "Officer, I do not wish to interfere. Could you please explain the legal reason for impounding my vehicle?" Let's break down why this phrase works so well. First, it makes clear right away that you're not going to get in the way of his job. That alone takes the tension out of the air. Second, it doesn't admit any fault whatsoever. You're not confessing to anything. You're not agreeing with the impoundment. You're just being polite. Third, and this is the most important point, you're asking for the legal basis for the decision. That's your right. Any officer, when taking an action like this, needs to have a reason grounded in law, whether it's a state traffic code, a court order, or a specific circumstance provided for by statute. Asking this isn't challenging his authority. It's simply exercising your right to understand what's happening to your own vehicle. And fourth, this phrase keeps the conversation on record in a professional way. Many patrol vehicles have cameras. Many officers wear body cams. When you speak calmly and ask for the legal justification, that gets recorded. And that record can be exactly what helps you later if you need to challenge the impoundment. I need to make this very clear. Asking for the legal basis of an action never means challenging the officer's authority. It's the opposite of that. It's acknowledging that there's a system of laws that governs even his job, and that you, as a citizen, have the right to understand how that system is being applied in your specific case. Now, here's something most people simply don't know. Police can't impound just any vehicle just because they feel like it. There's a specific set of circumstances laid out in each state's legislation that authorize this kind of action. And here's an important detail. Every state has its own rules. What applies in California might not apply in exactly the same way in New York or Georgia or Illinois. Common reasons include a suspended or revoked driver's license, lack of valid insurance, a vehicle involved in an arrest, or situations where leaving the car at the scene would pose a risk to public safety. The thing is, a lot of people confuse three concepts that are actually quite different: towing, impoundment, and temporary hold. Towing is often just removing the car from the location for safety reasons, for example, if it's illegally parked or blocking traffic. Impoundment is a more serious action, generally tied to a specific violation of the law, and the vehicle is held until certain requirements are met. And a temporary hold can happen, for example, during an investigation without necessarily meaning a formal impoundment. Understanding this difference makes all the difference after the stop is over, because the process for getting your vehicle back, the deadlines, the fees, even the required documents, changes completely depending on which of these three situations actually happened to you. And here's a piece of advice I always give my clients. Documenting everything politely is far more effective than arguing in the moment. Write down the officer's name, the patrol car number, the exact time, what was said. If it's safe to do so, record video of the stop. That material, gathered calmly and respectfully, is worth much more in the end than any heated argument on the side of the road. Once the stop is over and the vehicle has already been impounded, the game changes. Now it's time to act smart, not fast. First step, keep every document you were given. The impoundment notice, the citation, any paper the officer handed you. Don't throw anything away, even if it looks like just a bureaucratic form with no importance. Second step, write down as soon as possible the exact time and location of the stop. Details like these seem small in the moment, but in a legal dispute weeks or months later, they make all the difference. Third step, record all the relevant information while it's still fresh in your memory. What the officer said, the order of events, whether anyone else was present, whether there were cameras at the scene. Write it on your phone the same day before the details start blurring together in your head. Fourth step, and maybe the most important, seek legal guidance when the situation calls for it. Not every vehicle impoundment needs a lawyer, but when the amount of money involved is significant, when you believe your rights were violated, or when the process to get the car back is stuck, it's well worth seeking professional help. I've lost count of how many successful defenses I've seen begin with exactly how the driver behaved during the stop. People who stayed calm, who were polite, who documented everything, those people arrive at the courtroom or at the negotiating table in a much stronger position than someone who lost their temper in the moment. And to wrap up, knowing your rights isn't about fighting the police. It was never about that. It's about avoiding unnecessary harm. It's about making sure the whole procedure happens within the law. And it's about walking away from a stressful situation, knowing you did everything right the right way. In the end, that's what separates someone who walks away from a stop with a resolved problem from someone who walks away with a problem that only grows. If this video helped you understand your rights better, hit like right now. It really helps the channel reach more people who also need to know this. And if you want to keep learning how to protect yourself in situations like this, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell, because every week there's a new video explaining in a simple and straightforward way what the law actually says about your everyday life on the road. See you in the next video.